Hi, welcome back to White Noise. Today we're going to be doing something quite different from what we usually do. Nearly 2 years ago now, we started this podcast and we wanted to talk about originally all different kinds of media. But if you've been listening to us for a while, we do usually focus on visual media. I think the closest we ever got to talking about something outside of that was maybe our modern adaptations episode. We talked about how different pieces of literature had been adapted into like modern day. I think we mostly focused on like 2000s 2000 stuff, but even then we still focused quite a bit on like the visual adaptations as opposed to like the original text themselves. So today we want to go back to our own roots a little bit, when we were little emo kids in the corner of the library, avoiding daylight as much as we could. And we want to talk about books, pretty much. Books.
Booktalkers, watch your backs.
Yes.
But yeah, so if you can't, I've got my Booktok attire on for the YouTube viewers. Basically, we're diving into, how would you put it, Sky? Don't want to say Booktok books.
Well, originally we've wanted to talk about books and just literature in general for a while, because me and Leanna have always been huge readies.
Yeah, and we don't talk about that on this one.
We don't, but I think it's because, and this is why this year is like the perfect year to do it, we've both, the thing is as well, and I'm sure a lot of people are to relate to this, we're readers but we're also writers, and it is really hard to do both at the same time, really hard. So you'll go through a phase of like you'll focus just on your writing, and then you'll go through a phase where you focus just on reading. But the thing is that you feel guilty whenever you're not writing. So I think we've both this year tried to get back into reading a lot more. I know I definitely have.
Massively.
But you know what's happened though is that I think I've reached, and we'll discuss why in a minute, because I feel like we've both done it with the same book. I've reached my wall. I've got to that point in the year where like I've read quite a lot. Some of them I've enjoyed, some of them I haven't. We'll be getting into that. But I've hit that point now where I'm having to push myself through it, and now I'm thinking, should I go back to my writing? But that's a discussion for another day. So yeah, we talked about doing this a while ago, and I think the title of this episode is probably going to be The Rise of Booktok, or something to do with Booktok, because honestly, even if a lot of the books I've read haven't been in the Booktok area, it's probably Booktok and like Leanna introducing me to it that made me realize like, I really want to get back into reading again. I really want to be a part of these conversations. And for me, it was a similar thing that I think I've mentioned a few times in past episodes this year, that I really wanted to be a part of conversations more this year. I am so bad at just being out of the loop of things, not even intentionally. Like I'm happy liking obscure stuff. I'm happy liking mainstream stuff. It really doesn't bother me. But I'm just so late to everything that by the time I want to talk about stuff, it's already gone. And one of the books I think I'm going to try and segue into now that this happened with was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I know is a Booktok book, so I'm going slightly against what I said a minute ago. But I just remember seeing all the conversations about it online. And then by the time I read it, the only person I could talk about it with, thankfully, was Leanna. So I was like, I
will say for Booktok, I know it gets like a lot of critique, and we will talk about our critiques of it, but one thing I will give it is that it's getting people back into reading, because I mean, like you say, like it's had a massive influence on you. I wouldn't say it's made me read more, but it's definitely helped me find more things I like, so obviously that I guess it does count then. I think books like, say, Seven Husband is really obvious one when we talk about Booktok, because it's something that might not have found such a wide audience if it didn't find that like Gen Z audience, because they eat up the queerness of it, they eat like everything about it. It's just, I feel like Booktok has breathed new life into not just like reading, but also like writing and the publishing industry itself and everything. And I'm really excited to talk about all of that throughout this episode. Really,
Evelyn Hugo's a good one to start with, because at least for me, I think it's a really good example of both the overestimation and the underestimation of Booktok, because there's nothing wrong with it because everybody's different in what they like in any form of media. But obviously a lot of the stuff that is getting big on Booktok at the moment isn't our kind of thing. Like, I don't know if it's like a generational thing, just the genres we like to read. But with Evelyn Hugo, it was like, it wasn't, and don't get mad at me here, people who obviously are like in love with it, it wasn't the most interesting story. Like, the actual story, like, it was interesting to read because obviously I read it and I loved it, but it was quite I don't know how to phrase this without just sounding really horrible, but not boring, but like I said, it wasn't
a masterpiece.
Yeah, exactly. But I did love the structure of it. I thought that was so well done.
Do you want to know something? That might be the thing I don't like about it.
Really?
Yeah. Wait, so when you say structure, how do you mean? Because obviously there's the framing device.
So, right.
Also the structure in segmenting it by the husbands.
This is where I'm going to get a bit personal with myself. I don't know why. And I don't know if it's because of my like interview of the vampire obsession, but I've always really liked interview style storytelling. You know, I only realized it when I started like kind of writing a lot more myself, and it's kind of where I went to. But I think it's also because I love dramatic irony, and I don't know, maybe I feel safe knowing the end of stuff and just liking the build up to it. So that I really did enjoy, like the whole interview style between the characters. But I did also actually like how it was told through her husbands.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that's problematic or not.
No, that works fantastically, because obviously those are the main thing that people know about her, you know, as a celebrity in the world of the book. Like, it's so brilliant to break up her life by her husbands and like treat them as different eras, because it's just, I don't know, that's such a fucking fantastic way to pace a book. Yeah. And keep you interested, because you know, people point at certain areas of it in discussions when they talk about the book, and it's like, oh, what's your favorite part? But oh, when she's married to Harry. Things like
I think that. Visually as well, it's really easy to imagine, and I will say that isn't down to the book's description. That is just due to like the Gilded Era, Golden Age, Hollywood. Like, everybody knows that.
That is something so genius she did though, and Taylor Jenkins Reid, I have to give her credit for this. She's so good at like finding an era that we can really already imagine, because we've got so many resources, you know, we've already seen so many films and shows. A
very vibrant era as well.
Yeah, like, we will get into Daisy Jones after this, but like, honestly, like, something about Seven Husbands, like, don't get me wrong, it's not a masterpiece. I enjoy the way it's written because it's accessible, you know. Sometimes you're just not feeling the pretentiousness, you know, like you're feeling a bit poorly, or you're feeling a bit shit, something like Seven Husbands is perfect, isn't it? And I think that's worked massively to the book's favour, and it's why you can picture stuff so well. Because really, I will say this, sometimes pretentious writing and pretentious passages actually hinder you imagining the things happening in the book, because you focus so fucking hard on understanding what's being said, like in a sharp book. But I
was going to say, I don't want to skip ahead yet, but we will cut. I think we're going to save this particular book till the end. But I also have the same book in mind.
Yeah, like, honestly, I am so pro non-pretentious books. I don't care what anyone says. I do have my line when it comes to Booktok, like the super smutty side. It's just not for me. It's just not for me. Like, that's cool if you like that, but I don't think that should be lumped with like talking about literature. Do you know what I mean? Like, people literally, like, they'll be like, I don't know how to explain it, because like, I'm talking about liking not pretentious books, and then saying this, I sound like I'm being a hypocrite, but it is fascinating to me that this community develops such an obsession with smut.
I like smut as much as the next girl, but like, I like it in my fan fiction.
This is exactly what I'm saying.
You know what I mean?
Like, so like, I like, don't get me wrong, if you're reading like, say, like a romance novel or any kind of novel, a sex scene, like, it can do so much. And I like the way they're done in, say, Seven Husbands, where it's all more kind of like hinted at, and it's not super like, I'm not saying that in like, it's like, oh, it's so delicate and well written, like, it just doesn't feel the need to tell you every single moment. And obviously in certain books, that's the point, but it's not for me, and I don't understand.
Do you know what it's like?
I like one or two. I'll give
Yeah.
you that. But I really don't understand this whole community that only read that. It's so
I think it's like, you know, when someone has to explain a joke to you and it's not funny anymore.
exactly. It loses the appeal, doesn't it?
It really does. Like,
Yeah.
it's not even like a prude-ish thing. It's
Yeah.
more to do with like, if you want to write like raunchy, explicit sex scenes, go for it. But I don't think you can have something, say, like Evelyn Hugo, that's meant to be about like romance and life and fame, and then kind of underpin it with like really erotic.
Exactly.
It just
Because I
doesn't
think you
fit.
lose the point of it then, because Seven Husbands is more about, I'd say it's more about like people than it is
Yes.
about the romance. Like, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
like, it's fucking fantastic. Like, it's such a well-written romance. But
Yeah.
what's interesting isn't necessarily the romance, it's them as individuals, isn't it? Like,
Mhm.
Celia is not really a nice person. And that's
Mhm.
something, and neither is Evelyn, or like most of the
Mhm.
people in the book are pretty bad people. And I
Mhm.
think that's why it's gotten so big as well.
Well, that's it. That's why I loved it, because I love an unlikable main character, which is why, leading on to, I think, another book we wanted to talk about, I loved Boy Parts so much. And I had to come to terms with the fact that I liked Boy Parts, because when I first finished reading it, I was like, am I supposed to like this?
But that's brilliant. It's the same thing as when you read like a Bret Easton Ellis novel, isn't it? It's like challenging what we're allowed to enjoy, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we see it all the time now, the rise of the anti-hero, you know, like Walter White, everyone in Breaking Bad, Rick and Morty. Like, we're just in an era of loving anti-heroes. And I think the reason Boy Parts is so brilliant is because it sounds so dumb and basic, but it's because it's a female main character.
Yeah.
I can't even say protagonist, because that word don't feel right.
Yeah, but it's not. I would just go main character.
Yeah.
So Boy Parts was I think the first book I officially read this year. Did it start off my year?
Yeah, that timing's about right, I think, because
Maybe.
fun fact, I was reading Boy Parts in the queue for my COVID test.
Oh,
that
that
way,
really dates it.
that dates it, yeah.
Yes. Well, the thing is, I read Boy Parts, and like, I know, Leanna, you won't mind me saying this, but it was like stepping into your mind. If anybody ever really wants an insight into, like, I was about to say the kind of person, I don't mean she's like, I can't even, Irina?
Yeah.
I can't remember that.
Arena.
Yeah, Irina. I'm not saying, yeah, like, I can't, I'm not saying you would like her, but there was just something very Leanna about it.
It's
and
the
to anyone who's
every other page, it was like Neon Genesis Evangelion. I was reading it like a rat roll. Like, why would we get on?
literally like,
oh man.
Yeah.
And
but there is
like, you know, oh, I'm idolizing this terrible female character way. It was just so fantastically written. Like, it didn't feel like this person bad. Like, there were and stuff, you know, it was fleshed out.
And I think as well, like, it wasn't, even though there were layers, they weren't, at least this is the way I read it, they weren't layered as like excuses necessarily for how she was. Like, they were kind of explanations. Yeah. So like, she did terrible things, and I was like, oh my fucking god.
And do you know what's interesting about Boy Parts? I know the writer Eliza Clark gets a bit frustrated with how much people compare it to American Psycho, but how could you not? Oh, fun fact, by the way, she had never read American Psycho before writing this book, which is like, do we want to believe that?
She'd either seen or heard of it though, surely.
No, because the thing is, while you can go, oh, it's so similar to the film, it's actually way more similar in vibe to the book.
Yeah.
But she never read the book. But then this could be a whole Suzanne Collins Hunger Games thing, so I ain't touching that. But anyway.
That's not why we're here today.
What I loved about it is it does what American Psycho does, where like the violence, you don't understand if it's real or not. Like in the beginning, I was like, wait, is she killing people? Like, I couldn't quite tell at first, like if they were fantasies or not. But I loved that about it. I think that was my favorite part. That it felt a bit like Fever Dream.
Yeah, I think from the moment, I mean, I'm sure there were earlier moments, and like all the books we're talking about today, I have yet to reread any of them. So I can't wait for like a second dive in at some point later this year. But I think it was the bit where she's like in the hotel room with that guy, and she like smashed the glass or the camera or something on him, but then there wasn't any glass. That's when my mind went, this sounds very like American Psycho. And then the way that it ended, it did. But no, I liked it, and I was like conflicted that I liked it.
Very
it was
good writer. She has a bright
oh,
fucking future ahead of her, man. Fuck, she's so
definitely.
young as
And
well.
you know what? Just because of you mentioning like how a lot of books, especially like this, could be written pretentiously, this one wasn't, and
No,
it could have quite easily been written that way, and it wouldn't have been as good as
yeah.
it was. It would have ruined it.
This I don't mean this in a rude way. Like, I'm sure she'd hear this, she'd totally agree. A girl I work with, she's getting back into reading, and she's like, I can't do pretentious stuff. I just can't. Like, she's like, I haven't read a book in like 5 years, and she really likes thrillers now. Asked me for recommendations, recommended her Boy Parts. Got a message from her earlier today that she's absolutely loving it. So if that doesn't sum up how accessible that book is, I don't know what does. You know, like, you know, you could have not read in ages and you're gonna enjoy that if it's your cup of tea. Like, how many pages is it? I'm looking at it right now. It's like 200 and something at a push. And I don't know about you, Sky. Lately, I'm living for a book less than 300 pages.
Do you know, I was
350 at
just
least
going to say that,
max.
yeah.
I think, and what's fantastic about a lot of these like Booktok books is they're not too long, because I got real tired of that stint of big books being elevated. So like A Little Life, no book needs to be that long. Like, have you ever looked at A Little Life? It's like,
yeah.
No,
I don't need a book to take me a whole year to read.
Exactly. So another massive Booktok book, which is like kind of going to take me into an area that I wanted to talk about, is Secret History. Classic. It's been a classic for years, even on Tumblr and everything. It just got adopted by Booktok, you know, Dark Academia, Girls with Joyce. But
I have not read it.
I know you haven't. Sorry.
I won't be able to weigh in here.
It's about terrible people, right? It's fantastic. But it literally took me like triple the amount of time to read that it did Boy Parts. And I know different things require different, you know, like reading periods and like concentration. But the thing with Secret History is it comes across as pretentious. It's critiquing pretentiousness, which is fantastic, but you could still argue it falls into the trap of being pretentious, which is really interesting to me. And people elevate it and elevate it and elevate it, but I would like to see them read more stuff like Boy Parts, which, you know, can critique a lot of the same things without falling into the things it critiques. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But this is like leading me into this whole area of Booktok, which is like really unlikable characters, because that seems to be the thing at the minute, don't you think?
I think so, but like I think this is where, and I hate to say this because like it plays into the whole idea of gender, which is very frustrating, but I think it's like you said, there seems to be a rise in unlikable female characters at the moment, which I do think are becoming much more appealing to people, because we've seen unlikable male characters, and it's either we genuinely don't like them, or we don't like them because they're pretentious or because they're overconfident. And you know, we live in a world where men always get away with this stuff anyway. So I'm not saying that I want to live in a world where women are able to do the same thing, but I don't know, maybe it is like a dark part in my head that like I don't actually want it to happen, but reading about it's kind of like, so you know,
isn't it? Like,
yeah,
that's where the appeal came from, you know. It's just in this literature you kind of get to experience things vicariously, don't you, that, you know, as a woman you feel like you can. But I just find that like these books are kind of saturating the market now, and they're starting to lose a bit of the initial impact, which is always going to happen with a trend. But it's starting to become obvious that some of the books hitting the market have specifically been written for this trend. And I think that's when I think people need to like step back,
I think, yeah,
readers, you know, and kind of be like, oh, am I literally just reading something because it's a trend at the minute? You know, like I'm a massive advocate for just read what you like. I think we both are, like, massively. This is one thing I don't get about Booktok: the need to read everything in the hot genre at the minute, or the hot author. Like, it's almost treating reading as like mechanical, and it's reminiscent of like Letterboxd, you know, just churning out as many logs as you can. It's like, you have to spend a lot more time reading a book.
You can like, obviously when it comes to like films and TV shows, you can literally put it on and let it run itself to the end. Unless you're listening to an audiobook, you can't do that. And then to be fair, even when you listen to an audiobook, if you're not taking it in, there's no visuals to catch you up. So you do have to actively keep pursuing it. And if you want to finish it, you have to want to finish it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I feel like it's interesting you like putting a word or like a name to it, because I didn't really think about it like this until you said it. But like, I think this is why accessibility in literature is becoming such a big thing now. And why, so I actually read, I can't remember at what point of the year I read it, but a friend lent me the book, and is it Carmilla? The the female Dracula, for want of another, you know what I mean?
Yeah, cool.
Because anyone who knows me, I love vampires, I love women. It was like the perfect thing.
I do.
And I read it, and I also love Gothic literature. But I realized after reading that like there is Gothic literature I like, and yes, it is your stereotypical, I love Dracula, I do love Frankenstein, but this book was obviously written in a different era. So it's not written pretentiously, it's just written of the era, but I couldn't get into it.
Really?
Because of how it was written. And it was one of the rare moments where I was like, I think I might just watch the film. And it was like, even say, someone such as myself who loves that kind of genre, I would have actually much preferred, and maybe this is blasphemous, I don't know, maybe a modern day telling of it, not set in the modern day, but written, like you said, more accessibly. Because it's like, yes, I could read these words, yes, I knew what they were saying, but it was like, it was too much for my brain to compute when like I'd just come home from work, and I just couldn't get, I finished it eventually, but it's like a book this big that I think it took me longer to read that than it did Boy Parts. Or
and then you've got, say, something like, I don't know if you've read it yet, Dowry of Blood. Or what?
Not yet, but you keep telling me.
Banger. So that, you've got vampires, you've got queerness, you've got Gothic vibes, it's Gothic story, but it's accessible as all hell. It's not too long, it's independently published, so it's like nice big font, everything about it. So it's like you get to enjoy Gothic literature, not necessarily from the Gothic, traditional Gothic era, but it's still Gothic literature in a much more accessible way. And I'm like, that is a trend I'm loving in books at the minute. But those aren't the things I'm seeing on Booktok. I don't know if I'm in the wrong area, or that's just not content being elevated, So that's the stuff I want to see being pushed out by, Booktokers. I feel like I'm slandering them a lot, but I feel like a lot of them will do what the algorithm wants, which is like, it's all fair, like it's the game, you play the game. But I feel like with the platform, a lot of them have, instead of just showing the same female rage books, like My Year of Rest and Relaxation, and like these things, and Conversations with Friends and Sally Rooney novels, they could instead talk about stuff that needs the push, and that people would love, and that is accessible for new readers, like, I don't know.
Well, a book I would love people to talk about more, because I've fallen in love with it this year, and I could be about to say a book that like everybody's read, but as I said, I'm always out of the loop. I just came across this book because it got recommended while I was shopping online one day because of all the books I'd already read, and it's I Who Have Never Known Men. It was so good, because it was like you said, it was written, I thought it was written really accessibly, considering it is a dystopian end of the world kind of thing. It could have been written, like you said before, really pretentiously, and also like nothing happens in it. Like, stuff happens, but nothing happens.
Don't you enjoy that in a book though?
But it was apparently so, because I couldn't put this down, and then when I did, it left me with like such an empty feeling that I wanted to hold on to, and I can't wait to read it again. Like, I feel I could read it again and again and again and genuinely never get bored, despite the fact that nothing happens. But like, this is the kind of book that, maybe I'm just being biased because I liked it so much, but I think should be pushed out more, because to me it was very different from that genre. Like when you come to like dystopian and stuff, you always have this huge backstory of why the world is the way that it is. You don't get that in I Who Have Never Known Men. So many questions get raised and not one of them gets answered. Not one.
I feel like this has come across in your taste. I feel like your taste is changing actively at the minute. And from all the things you've been enjoying, like ones I've recommended and ones you're finding, like you seem to be enjoying like more sparse stuff, like vaguer stories. you know.
Well, this is why, and this is again thanks to you, I really started getting into Japanese literature.
Oh, let's go. I was waiting for you.
Because it's that whole thing of, and I'm not saying it's the same across all Japanese literature, because you know I've read books that didn't do that and I didn't enjoy them, but there's a certain
of like contemporary Japanese
fiction,
yeah,
there's a certain type. And to use two of the examples I know we've both read, If Cats Disappeared from the World and The Memory Police.
oh, such gorgeous books.
Such gorgeous books. And like, what is it? It's a bit different to I Who Have Never Known Men, because like stuff happens, quite a lot of stuff happens, but it's not over explained. It's not even leaving it up to your
doesn't it?
Yeah,
it states it and you do what you want with it.
And it's not even, I wouldn't even say it's like, oh, it's ambiguous and you can just read it in so many ways. It's just that like it doesn't treat the reader like they don't know anything.
Yes.
Which I think is a little bit, and don't get me wrong, in my own writing, I have had to unlearn this. And thankfully, because of these books, I feel like I'm getting better at it now. I was so bad at over explaining stuff because I'd be so worried that somebody wouldn't be able to picture exactly how it was. But I'm like, they don't have to.
You can't control that, yeah.
Yeah.
Even if you describe it in the way you think is perfect, you can't control how someone's going to see something.
Exactly.
Right? And like we said earlier in this about, say, like Seven Husbands, there's not actually all that much description. And it works so well in the book's favour. So, you know, I'd love to see it in more like Western fiction. It's definitely happening. And I think more writers could really learn from reading novels from a completely different region to what they're used to. Because like, I honestly think we're starting to read Japanese books. That was an absolute game changer for me. Honestly. And I'm not talking Haruki Murakami. Like, he's something else. I'm talking about like novellas. So If Cats Disappeared from the World, absolute classic. Before the Coffee Gets Cold. Pretty much everyone and their mum has read that at this point, for good reason. It's incredible. I will recommend, because I do not see this author enough on Booktok, is Banana Yoshimoto. I would love to see some big Booktokers really push out Banana Yoshimoto if they're going to push Japanese fiction, because like their writing is just so incredible and so ahead of its time. Like, they talk about queerness and transgender individuals in Japan in I think they started getting published in the 80s. So it's really interesting to read like now, and just the language around it from that time and from a completely different region of the world to what we're used to. It's just like absolutely incredible. If I could really push one thing in this video, it would probably be Japanese novellas.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Because like you said, the accessibility, the fact that you could read, like, if you really wanted to, you could read like 2 of them a week.
Yeah, exactly.
I literally read If Cats Disappeared from the World on a ferry ride to France.
Yes.
And like I came back,
you're a bitch.
Changed woman. I was just like,
right, let's talk about it. Books that you genuinely feel like a different person after you've read them. I always see TikToks that like books that will change you, and they're so like, don't get me wrong, they're good books, but they're not ones that have made me really go fuck. Because I would pick something like The Memory Police.
Yeah, I would have to say, I think for me the beginning of it was obviously If Cats Disappeared from the World, but The Memory Police actually probably same, because you recommended it to me whilst I was actually writing my own novella, which I never done before. I have a huge tendency to waffle on, which was very useful when I was in uni and I had to write essays, but people don't want to, that's not what people want to purchase. Like, we're proving it now by the fact that people want accessibility.
Yeah.
And I was like, especially for a novella, I was like, I needed to be able to build this world without spending so many chapters of it explaining it. Like, the first draft I had of this novella was like, there was so much, what's it called?
Exposition.
That's it. There was so much exposition, which was great because then I could use it as a draft and like weave it into the story later on in different ways. But when I first read it, I was like, fuck me, I'm bored. I was like, if I'm bored, then I need to move on. So you recommended Memory Police to me. And whilst the two, like what I was writing and Memory Police are like very different stories, it taught me how, again, you would think for a story like that, you would need a lot of explanation into it. But you really
don't. You know what? Western ideas of sci-fi and fantasy are so different to, say, like in more of the Eastern countries. That's such a generalization, but I don't know about a way to word it. Because we think of sci-fi and fantasy as being about world building and, like, say, exposition and explaining why a world is this way. Whereas in Memory Police, you're just planted in this world. And like, you obviously get the necessary explanation, but like, it doesn't give you any explanation that the characters wouldn't have. Do you know what I mean? You don't get information that they wouldn't have. Because sometimes you read the Hunger Games and you're like, oh, fuck me, like, don't get me wrong, love it, but it is a bit of an exposition slog, you know, when you're reading those books. And reading something like The Memory Police, I was like, holy shit, I never thought you could write, because it's technically sci-fi.
Yeah, I think with something like the Hunger Games as well, obviously because that was always written to be a series, you can kind of get away with exposition just for the fact that you do it in the first book, you're done.
Yeah.
But obviously with stuff like The Memory Police, and it's a one-off, and like other stories and short novellas, they're one-off, so like you can't do that. But I feel like Memory Police was particularly clever because like there wasn't really a lot of explaining in it, which was good, but like there kind of couldn't be, because the characters don't know, they don't remember anything.
Oh,
and I thought that was so clever.
Even just through reading it, you're seeing the downfall. Does that make sense? Like, I started reading it and I was like, oh my god, it's heartbreaking. And they don't even do these things like these huge mental scenes. It's just in the quiet things, like how she can't remember the word for something, and it's so sad. I was just like, what an incredible book. There's one that I don't think you've read it yet, but it's another one I really suggest to listeners, is The Man Who Fell with Grace from the Sea. Is incredible.
The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with or from the Sea. I have read it.
Oh my god,
I didn't like it.
Are you joking?
I thought I told you.
Top 6 for me. Top 5, I mean. Like,
I couldn't get into it.
Really?
Yeah. So this is just like, I think this is a good example of how, like, I'm not saying it was like badly written or anything like that, but like I don't love everything that but yeah, it was, I don't know, I just I couldn't get into it.
It gave me Japanese Lord of the Flies.
Same. But maybe that's why, because as much as I'm not saying Lord of the Flies is bad, but because it's one of those books that you have to study at school, and also in our school our headmistress read it to us and it was a whole thing. I have like bad memories associated to it, so it wasn't for me, but I can understand why people, and also I did literally read it in a day as well, so I can't even be angry that I didn't really like it, because it didn't really take up that much of my time.
But this is the beauty of starting to read novellas. Like, I think the beauty of the novella is lost on Booktok. Do you know what I mean? They're so about, like, say, like these like smut authors and getting through all of their books, and like, you know, like fat books like The Secret History and A Little Life. They just don't really talk about novellas much, which is interesting to me.
Moving away slightly from novellas and short stories, there is one book I read this year that I actually I needed more from, and it was We Had to Remove This Post. Just because you were the one who recommended it to me, have you read We Had to Remove This Post?
No, I actually haven't.
So I'm not saying
I've heard of it.
Yeah, I'm not saying don't read it. However, I did like it, because I felt like for what it was talking about, it's kind of ironic, because like for anyone who has read it or even heard of it, like it's obviously about people having to moderate social media posts, and they see some pretty fucked up stuff, and like part of the book is that the main character talks about how, you know, people always want to hear, like, the question that they always get asked is, what's the worst thing you've ever seen? And they want to hear like the really nasty stuff. So when I say I wanted more from it, I didn't want more like gore and horrible. That's not why I was reading it. But there's like so much psychology that I feel like was touched on. But the book's like, I mean, it's literally behind me. Like, it's like this big.
Yeah, and I was surprised when I saw how thin it is. Well,
this is what I mean. There was so much that happened in it. Like, so there was a scene, like, spoiler for you if you don't mind, but there's like a scene in it where they're all in the building where they're like they moderate the social media posts, and outside they see somebody on top of the opposite building and looks like they're going to jump. And I can't remember it exactly, but I think they all kind of just stand and watch as it's like kind of going down, which is, I think it's like one of the first times something like that happens. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is interesting, because the book kind of leads you to believe that you're going to follow this group of people who now, because of what they have to do, react differently to certain situations.
Reality.
Exactly. So it's not like they were like egging this person on to jump. They were just kind of like, okay,
that's so dark.
You're gonna do it then?
I love that idea.
So did I, but it happens, and then it kind of just gets swept. Like, so the person doesn't jump either. This is the other interesting thing. I can't remember why they're up there, but I think somebody does react and they go over. And yeah, I don't think they were even going to jump, but that was like their first thought. Which, that part of it I didn't think was that interesting, because to be fair, if I saw someone on top of a building, I would also probably think that's what was happening. But it was the whole psychology of, even though they thought that was going to happen, nobody was really doing anything about it. And there's a lot of moments like that. Because of how short the book is, there's not enough depth into those moments.
Okay, so obviously I can't say much because I've not read it yet, but this is where we might differ, because I love stuff that's unsaid, I've noticed recently. So like, say for example, I'll be reading like a romance novel and there'll be like a very quiet sentence that really does not call attention to itself, and I will fixate on that way more than anything else. I think it's kind of like, you know, the concept in, say, like photography and art, like you know, negative space, empty space. I'm starting to love that in books.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe I'll,
you'll have to read it.
Maybe.
Well, you'll have to read it and tell me, because personally I don't think it did that.
Okay.
So I think
it wasn't intentionally doing that. You think it
I just think
halfway went there.
Yeah, for me it was very abrupt the way things cut off. It wasn't like oh, now I'm going to leave you to stew on it, which you can. And but realistically, and this is where like there's a big difference between stuff like what we were just talking about, like the memory police and things, which leaves a lot up to your own interpretation, and then just not actually explaining or something that much. And it's like, I'm not gonna lie, like a lot of I do think a lot of it was intentional, in the sense that they want you to really delve into it yourself. But like, if I enjoyed a book just because of what I decided to get from it, then it wasn't really a good book for me.
That's true.
The book has to do at least some of the work. As much as I love ambiguity and I love being challenged as a reader, but the book has to meet me at least halfway. And I just don't feel like that one did, which was, like I said, it was just ironic because I had just come off reading, I think, I can't even remember, but I think maybe something that was quite short and I did enjoy. And then I went into that and I was like, oh, okay, I'm in a mood of like, I just want to like bang out a load of books like over these next few months. And then I was like, oh, do you know actually what I just read? It wasn't even a short book. I think I just read Tender is the Flesh, which is very different.
I still need to read that so badly. It's sitting on my shelf.
That one, I mean, I only read it because you, I think, put a tweet out or something one day that you couldn't decide between two books. So you gave like the synopsis of both of them. And I was like, this is a thing. So I finally got it. And it is one I would recommend people to read. I would obviously say it is explicit and touches on a lot of very uncomfortable subjects. It's one of those books that like I've recommended someone at work to read it. And I said, I was trying to, without giving anything, it's one of those books about without actually giving anything away, I was trying to give like content warnings. But then I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm giving so many warnings that now I'm wondering if she's kind of going to be disappointed because I'm making it sound like it's worse than what it is. To anybody who's read it, let me know. Like, I say to people, just be very cautious reading it, because to those who know, obviously it is a book about legalized cannibalism. But the reason I enjoyed it, and maybe this is why when I went into, we had to remove this post, I was in quite a different mindset, was not even the story, but like the whole point of the book is words and the meaning that words hold. And I fucking love that because I'm such a literature nerd. Like,
such a language person.
I'll read the dictionary for fun. Like, that's how late I am. So that, Tender is the Flesh was about how it used, I mean, it had like a lot of commentary and a lot of things, and it was very much one of those societal commentaries that there were parts of it I did roll my eyes at a bit because I was like, okay.
Bit heavy-handed, yeah.
Yeah. But there were like scenes when the main character was like in a butcher's store, and he talked about how the evolution of this cannibalistic world came to be through, people at first were horrified by it because it would be like feet for sale or whatever, but then they gave it a different name. They started calling the humans they eat by different names, and then as soon as they did that, it was a lot easier for people to accept that's what they were eating. So that's why it's interesting, and that's why I recommend people to read it. It's just the story with which is told through it is pretty fucked up.
I've got to read it. Maybe that's my next read after the book we are going to talk about in a bit. Honestly, another book I want to bring up. I feel like we're just listing books, but it's fun,
Yeah,
let's vibe.
This is what me and Leanna have been up to this year, if anyone was interested.
One I'm sorry, we have to talk about it if we're talking about the Booktok books. My Year of Rest and Relaxation. Come on, have you read it? So what did you think? I don't think you've ever fully told me what you think of that book.
I liked it.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure most people do.
I think it was another one where I wanted a bit more from it, and also by the end of it, I didn't get it. Like I thought it was really
a bit.
Yeah, I think it
very surreal almost, doesn't it?
Yeah. I just think it. I mean, well, to be fair, the way that it ended, I don't know how else it could have ended, because it wasn't actually building towards anything. But in a weird way, I kind of liked that. Maybe because it was actually another book that literally gave me nothing. I don't know why I'm enjoying books that aren't giving me anything.
I can't even begin to explain it. It's just good, isn't it?
But I did really like it, and I was able to. And I know you've said this now as well. I'm not trying to say that books on Booktok are bad, but I was able to remove it from the Booktok genre whilst I was reading it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, like there were parts of it where I was like, oh, okay, obviously. But then to be fair, boy parts, even the same. There were parts of it where I was like, oh my God, like you said, way back, Tumblr would have eaten that shit up.
My big thing though is the miscategorization of books due to, and this is a thing we have to talk about, tropes on Booktok.
Yes.
Ridiculous. Honestly, I don't get why people go, if you like books about unlikable female leads, read this. It's like, that could be a completely different novel that you will not enjoy at all. Like that's such a superficial, I don't know, it's easy and it helps people find other stuff they like, but that's how you get people to only read the same things over and over again.
I think the best way to go down that kind of route is to go by themes.
Yes, I agree. And this is where basically I'm headed. So with My Year in Rest and Relaxation, it kind of was talked about as a book about like female rage and like unlikable women and themes of like gender, but I didn't read it that way at all.
I didn't get that at all.
Dealing with trauma and grief and
yeah,
exactly. So
maybe that says a lot about us.
I'm thinking it's the age demographic, because I think a lot of obviously it's a generalization, I'm not saying 15-year-olds haven't been through a lot, but I think a lot of 15-year-olds would read that book and be like, oh, she's such a dickhead, I love her, and not realize why she's doing these things and medicating so heavily and such.
But I don't think there's,
now that everyone can be a content creator and have a platform, you can control the narrative of something, It's interesting.
I don't think there's actually anything wrong in saying that, because it's like when you watch or read something when you're younger and then you watch or read something older and you have very different reactions to it. Like I read The Lovely Bones way too young. I was probably in like maybe my first year of secondary school, maybe even a little bit younger, like the summer of. I literally saw my mom reading it one day, and like my mom's so funny because and I'm sure a lot of parents were like this, for example, very different, but she wouldn't let me watch the True Blood series, but she did let me read the books first. And whilst I do appreciate the show did obviously get a lot more sexualized and gruesome than the books still had a lot in them for the age that I read them. Yeah. And this is why I think she let me read The Lovely Bones, because even though obviously it has a very dark story. She didn't really think it would impact me the same way as, say, I mean, obviously when I read the book, the film hadn't come out yet, but beside the point, as if like I watched something like that. And I guess for a kid, maybe, because I don't think you take in books the same way as you do visuals. And then maybe I think as you get older, it kind of swaps, or at least it did for me. But yeah, and for that reason, I think I ended up reading quite a lot of mature books, should we say, when I shouldn't have done.
They just don't hit what they do when you get older.
No, because but this is why I think a lot of the books I've been reading recently have kind of like pushed boundaries a bit, because not that I want to be shocked or disgusted or anything like that, but because we've spoken about it before, I guess it is a kind of desensitization. But then ironically, books like I Who Have Never Known Men or My Year of Rest and Relaxation that didn't actually give me anything, I really enjoyed.
But the thing is, sometimes you can think you've got nothing, but you've got a lot.
Yeah.
Because that's what I always think about conversations with friends. Like, what did I get from this book? But then I think I did get a lot from it. And you can't put it into words. Sometimes it's just the vibes.
That is it though.
It really
I am literally reading books off vibes at the moment.
No,
which is what I think might be leading us to the book we're both reading right now, that may or may not make people not want to listen to this episode anymore.
As big as we thought it was. It seemed like it was gonna be.
It really did. And I
don't know if it's, I think what's happened is it was getting big in America and Booktok. It took so long to come to the UK, because the things that have gotten big, it's when they've already been out a little while, so you can readily access them across the globe. But the problem is, a certain Hunger, name drop, got big when it was only available in North America. So I think it fizzled itself out. But I still in my head was like, oh, this book that's been huge for about a year, like I'm so excited. Remember, I didn't even I hadn't realized it was out yet. Waterstones, I lost my fucking mind.
Well, do you know what? Similar thing with me, and this is like what didn't help, that built the hype for it, is that when I saw that you had it, I was like, I literally thought it didn't come out until the following month. I was like, fuck, I need to go get it. So I went, and first I tried ordering it online, which obviously couldn't happen. And it's like, it must be good if you can't get it online, because you can get everything online these days. So I went into Waterstones as well, and I couldn't fucking find it anywhere. And I was like, I'm either gonna have to wait for Leanna to finish and then ask to borrow her copy, or I'm just gonna have to wait until it gets restocked. I was like, but I don't want to, because I want to read it now. So I just happened to I went up to the woman who works there, because that's what you do, and she was like, I'll try and find it for you. She found the last copy in the whole store, and she also said to me that a friend of hers had read some kind of earlier draft and just said how amazing it was, and that she was like so happy she got to read it first. And I was like, fuck yeah, let's go. And obviously the plot of it I was super interested in, because it was like, to me, it was like combining literally though, it was like combining boy parts and Tender is the Flesh. And
my thing with it is, if you can get attention in what it's the whole thing, isn't it? If you can get attention in one sentence, you've got a winner on your hands. And I'm not being funny. The synopsis, if you're not familiar with it, is it's literally about a female food critic who eats her lovers. I'm sorry, that's a
what more do you need?
Killer one-liner.
What more do you need? Apparently,
of books,
different writing. I feel so bad saying this, because, and it's not, I mean, maybe it does come from like being a writer as well. So I can't take criticism, but obviously it's not nice to get it. So I like don't want to shit on the author, because it's just written in a style I couldn't get to grips with. But it goes back to what you said at the beginning. It is written really, really pretentiously. But the thing is, it fits. I do think it fits the character.
Because also, if we're going to talk about framing devices, it's supposed to be her memoir, isn't it? So she's sat in prison. That's not a spoiler, by the way.
Yeah.
This is like the opening of the book.
But there probably will be spoilers moving forward. So if you haven't read it,
Well, that's obvious through the whole episode.
Yeah, true.
You'll follow at this point. So it makes sense it would be pretentious, because she's a pretentious food critic. And I kind of like the stuff it doesn't say, like that she's from a different era and kind of not accepted that. So she's from an era where like being a writer could get you good money, and like pretentious writing was the thing and stuff. And it just shows like I really appreciate the character's an older woman. You know, she's not 20.
I really liked that. Yeah.
She's like mid-40s, 50 by the time she's in prison, something like that.
Maybe a little bit older. I think
Yeah,
so.
maybe 50.
Yeah. And to be
No,
fair,
I think she's like late 40s. But
she does. I know. I think she's like in her 50s because I'm sure
she's
at like the mid,
in like 70s, isn't she?
Yeah, I think the main part of the book, she's like hovering around her like early 40s, late 30s, which is really interesting because obviously a lot of the books that we've been talking about and read have been female characters in like their 20s.
True.
Yeah.
And this one, so the pretentiousness works because it fleshes out the character. I think are really clever choices, you know, with writing in that style. It reads like you're reading a fancy fucking lifestyle magazine from 2004, which works really well. But just because something is clever doesn't mean it's good.
And also, I have to wonder to a certain extent if maybe I'm actually not the target audience for this in the end, because honestly, I can't decide if it's actually been written a bit too nichely, because I know it's written, like I said, I know it's written like a memoir, so I know it is written like you said, like a lifestyle magazine. But the amount of times she compares something to food, I'm like,
it really is.
I get it. I was like, I get it. Okay. I think naming the chapters after food and drinks is enough. Honestly, from the first moment I started reading it, I wanted to put it down.
We both said this to each other really early in it though, like, and what kills me, and you said the same, is there are some killer moments. And I don't mean events in the book, I mean killer little like passages. I've put them on my Instagram story if you want to see. But basically, like, that to me is worse because it shows there was potential. And have you noticed those killer passages are the scenes where they speak a bit less pretentiously? But it makes me wonder if this is intentional. Like, I doubt it, but if it's that, you know, there's moments where like the facade slips slightly, but then it's also like, is she a psychopath? Is she not? Like, I don't really
I think it's important to note right now that neither me nor Leanna have finished the book. We are going to. I've just put so much time into this now. I am going to finish it. And like, don't get me wrong, I'm not enjoying it, because if I'm not, well, actually that's a lie. I am really stubborn. I probably would finish it anyway.
Yeah, way less than I am.
You haven't read as much as I have.
True.
It's just, do you know what actually annoys me? I think the reason I'm not enjoying it as much as I thought I was going to is actually because there are parts of it that I've really enjoyed. Like, if I didn't enjoy it at all,
there's no consistency.
If I didn't enjoy it at all, I'd be like, oh, okay, you know, this book isn't for me.
I would just you just put it down.
Do you know what's ironic as well? The bits I'm not enjoying, which is actually just going back in time and talking about the men that she's eaten, I much prefer it in the present day, which is like psychoanalyzing herself, because that kind of self-awareness from somebody who quite openly identifies as a psychopath is really interesting. That's what I want more of, but I'm like halfway through this right now, and unless it does a complete like flip and it just starts doing that, I don't know if it's going to meet.
Another thing, I think when you're a queer woman, that can be it objectifies men, obviously she's eating men, blah blah blah, but I feel like it doesn't dive into that enough. And I think, like, because she's always talking about how sexy these men are and how she loves their bodies, it's just like not super into that part. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, don't get me wrong, go for her.
But then there is that one
it's very forced.
There is that one passage, and I think this is one of the latest ones you posted on your Instagram, where she talks about how basically life is cannibalism, and she lists the different ways. I thought that was genius, because to me that also really brought the reader into it, and you're like, oh, okay.
It kind of a bit of a mission statement of novel.
And she also, like, the way that she justifies, I'd say, cannibalism, or normalizes it,
because
she's kind of interesting.
She doesn't need to normalize it, but then you get these passages and it's like, but
then the thing, but to me it doesn't read as in she's trying to justify it to herself. She's kind of, it's like I hate to say it, but it's like holding up a mirror. It's kind of being like, oh, you know, you're getting grossed out and think whatever. But this is why I am going to see it through to the end, because there is a line in the description of it where it says, like, by the end of the book, you'll be wondering what your lover tastes like, sauteed in mushrooms and whatever. And that's where I can kind of feel like it's building up to. It's building up there slowly, and it's giving me a lot of backstory that.
I don't know where it's going to end.
Well, the thing is, it can't end anywhere other than the fact because it ends at the beginning.
Yeah.
It begins at the end. That's what I was trying to say.
I'm not sure how
she gets
about the framing device. Like, I like it and I hate it.
I like it. I do like it, but I think that goes back
to device, so.
That's what I mean though. I think that's where it goes back to like the whole dramatic irony of it, and the fact that like, I mean, I mean, she's in for a life sentence. Yeah. It's gonna end in I personally think it's just gonna end.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's a memoir as well. She's just telling her story.
You know, I will say one thing. I don't know if you thought this at all while reading it. I cannot shake the feeling it would be a good stage production.
I think it would be as well. Totally.
It's a device, isn't it?
Yeah. I can imagine like one of those like almost one person shows, but then every time she kind of, and this is where it would work because it would probably get rid of a lot of the bits that I don't like, but every time she talks about something she did, it's kind of like off in the background as she talks about it.
Oh no, so I would have intermission-y bits. Not intermission, you know what I mean? I would have her talk about something and then you'd have a scene and like kind of the monologues are the main part, you know?
I'm thinking more like an unbroken monologue with stuff happening in the background.
Yeah, it's giving very like Jodie Comer, like
pretty much
stage production.
Pretty much, that's what I'm thinking.
I actually think it would. It seems like something that should have been a production.
See, do you know what? This is why I'm always interested how stuff starts. Because maybe I'm not saying it started like a stage production, but maybe it was a lot more monologue-y, and then maybe their agent or editor read it and they were like, it's a bit boring, you gotta push it up a bit if you want to get you know, like I mean, I'm not saying it's the case, but like maybe the bits that I don't enjoy, the author was like, maybe I should have put those in. I don't know.
I'm always fascinated by what an author dislikes once the book goes out into the world. Like, I always wonder if there's, you know, sometimes a book will come out and everyone will be in agreement that this one bit is like, I reckon author's like, fuck's sake, I knew I shouldn't.
I just find it interesting that we're both not enjoying it, and I feel like I know there are different parts of it that we're not enjoying for different reasons, but I think mostly we're very much in agreement. And I think a big part of it, and this like loops background to kind of like what we were talking about before about Booktok, I think a big part of it was so hyped. So hyped.
Though with Booktok, like I keep talking about my critiques of Booktok, and that's one of them, is just things get hyped to fuck, you know. Nothing can live up to those standards, you know, because the thing is, at the end of the day, a book is not like a film release where you're going to go to a midnight screening and get in the crowd. Like, you can get as hyped as you want for a book, but you are just going to end up sitting there reading this book. Like, it's not going to be the grand affair. So like, of course you're setting yourself up for disappointment. I mean, this is like a really obvious statement, but obviously because reading is such a personal thing, like this is why it's been really interesting reading this almost kind of like alongside you, because it has almost been like watching a film together, because like we're kind of like reacting to similar bits, like what the but like obviously you can get that in like a cinema and you can talk about it afterwards, because like you're watching it at the same time. If you go and watch a film with someone, you are watching it at the same time. If you read a book the same time as someone, you're not going to finish it at the same time. Don't get me wrong, you can get very different things out of a film, but I feel like what you get out of a book can be even more different. Yeah, definitely. Because that's so much more personal and experience. Yeah. Not right in front of your face. So yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think we need to post an update on Twitter when we finish it. Yeah, I think so. I've review from each of us. Be really interesting if one of us completely changes our mind. I honestly, do you know what I'm also imagining? Kind of documented right now, because I can't wait to see if either of us changes our tune. Because sometimes it's just an amazing ending makes a book fucking fantastic. Because if this ends well, that means the whole rest of the book will change, really, upon a reading. I don't think it's going to. No, I feel like I'm going to feel very much, this is going to be interesting if we do change our minds, but I feel like I'm going to feel very much the same. Do you know what I'm imagining right now? Somebody listening to this who's read it being like, no, you have to get to the end, you have to get to the end, and that would usually be us. Literally though. Do you know what? I hope it does that. If it does that, it's ironically going to probably end up being one of my favorite books that I've probably read, because it's like, wow, you had me in the first half. Exactly. You didn't in the first.
Yeah, true. But yeah, I'm gonna finish it. We'll post our updates.
Yeah.
But for now, I don't know if there's anything particular you want to leave anyone with, Leanna. Do we want to recommend? I mean, I feel like this whole episode's just been recommendations.
Saying what to watch and what not to watch. I'm just looking at my bookshelf like, I know. Do you know what? I will say one thing. Conversations with Friends. Been in discussion because obviously the show came out a month or two ago. Give the book a read. Everyone always talks about Normal People because obviously that was the Booktok book. Read Conversations with Friends. I think it's the way better Sally Rooney book. What about you?
Well, if anyone couldn't guess, my recommendation would be I Who Have Never Known Men. I've written a review on it, everything. I'm just consumed by this book.
I just remembered one I'm just going to mention at the end, as a recommendation. We can't dive into it because I'll talk forever. Things have gotten worse since we last spoke. Fuck me, everyone listening has to read that. I read it it's really short. I literally read it in like an hour. Oh my god, unsettling. Does not cover it. Like, it takes a lot for me to honestly feel like there are bugs on my skin, and that did it. Not because it's particularly like grotesque, it's like just a dynamic. So I don't know if you've actually heard of it, Sky.
I've never heard of it, no.
Online relationship between two women sending emails back and forth, and you just know things are unfolding through these emails to each other. It
sounds like the plot of like a twisted 90s film.
Just
okay. Maybe I'll move on to it after I finish A Certain Hunger, because I think I'm gonna need, no pun intended, a palate cleanser. Yeah.
We'll tweet out our recommendations, so definitely follow us on socials, because I feel like we're going to be posting a lot of them around for this episode. So
definitely.
So remember to follow us on Instagram and Twitter and all the usuals.
And as usual, especially with this one, let us know your thoughts. Like, if you agreed with us, if you didn't agree with us, if there's any like you think we really should be reading ourselves. Like, there's so many that I know we've read this year that we haven't mentioned because they've obviously just
can't possibly do it. Like we said earlier, we read a lot and we never talk about it on the podcast. So if you enjoyed this, let us know, and we're gonna do a bookie episode.
Oh, definitely.
Thank you for watching or listening or however you consumed this. And leave a like and subscribe if you feel like it. And that's it for today.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.